My name's Garrett. I'm 28 years old, and I'm a firefighter here in the Valley.
My name is Ashley Rodriguez. I am 29, and I'm a single mom raising 3 kids.
My name is Ron Neubauer. I am 50 years old, and I work as a project manager. I didn't believe in a God because science was supporting the fact that God didn't exist. It was written in books. It was widely known around the world through the Big Bang Theory with Hawking's saying this is how the universe came about.
Growing up, my parents were, involved in the church. They decided to baptize me as an infant. Did I inherit my parents' faith? I don't think so. I knew about Jesus. I went to church on Sundays, but I was still kind of living my everyday life outside of that.
I would go to church every so often with my grandma, and I didn't really have a relationship with God. I really didn't understand who God was. In 2013, the kid's father and I ultimately got a divorce. I was really sad and depressed and didn't know what I was doing with life, and I had no direction. I was angry at God that He would put me in a position that I would be raising 3 kids on my own at 25.
The big influences on my life was my father and the multiple scientists that I looked up to. That created the view of church is not important. It is not needed. Everything in there is a lie. The Bible's not true. So that was just the way it came across, and it's just the way I saw it.
The questions that I kind of wrestled with was infant baptism versus baptism by immersion. Would being baptized twice, quote unquote, be wrong? Would it? Is it something I need to do? I wanted to know what happens at baptism. Why do we do it? Why do different denominations do it differently? For me, that's when I started overthinking those questions.
I would say my relationship with God at that time was non-existent. I really didn't have a desire to get to know Him. I just kind of always went to church because that's what my grandma did.
Back in college, you take philosophy, you take world religions, you take all these classes that really make you question things that you think you know. And so really trying to dive in and make sure, is what I believe really true regardless of what I believe? That's a legitimate question.
So after attending CCV the first few times, I definitely thought about baptism. I just didn't feel like I was worthy. I wasn't doing anything that they were encouraging, going to neighborhood groups, so I just felt like I wasn't worthy of getting baptized.
We had a message on baptism where, Pastor Ashley really kind of broke it down. While I'm sitting there listening to him talk, I'm sitting there with the questions rolling, the Rolodex going in my head. What about this? What about that? And it really just, I guess, sparked a fire in me to kind of all right, you know what? I need to figure this out.
There were certain events in my life that took place, which was, first and foremost, my wife. She was a big believer. She always wanted us to go to church as we were growing our family. We finally went because, again, she would see the stickers, and then we saw the church. I'm like, oh, that's too big. But then she convinced me, and then we started going to church.
At the end of service, Pastor Don said, if you didn't come prepared, we came prepared for you. And it just sent chills down my body. I got goosebumps. I had tears in my eyes. And after service, I still wasn't sure.
So I reached out to a good friend of mine, Jake. He's a pastor here at CCV, and we sat down, and I brought all my notes. I'm like, here it is. I'm ready to debate. Basically, he helped me just discover, I was kind of creating an idol of this theology rather than just focusing on my relationship with Christ. And it made me realize that I was more worried about being right, and I wasn't necessarily leaning on God's understanding. I was leaning on my own.
We joined the neighborhood groups, and that's where I had the opportunity, because during service you can't ask questions, but in the neighborhood groups I was able to get many of my questions asked. I may not have gotten all the answers, but it was great to even just ask the questions, to be able to reveal a little bit more about yourself. And we would get deeper into the Bible and then start getting those questions answered, and creation versus evolution. And we were talking about, really, you need more faith to believe that something came from nothing versus someone who created us.
After that conversation, I decided I was going to get baptized. Shared it with my close friends that we were coming to church with, and 4 of us decided to get baptized that day. The moment I was able to accept that Christ loves me more than anyone else does, doesn't matter who it is, and I accepted that and believed that and let that soak into my heart. The rest of the black and white questions, they don't even matter anymore, because I know now, and I've seen it transform my life.
I think God seeks the broken, and if you're broken, that's who He wants. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be whole in order to get baptized, because you are worthy of God's love.
I think God was always trying to reveal Himself to me. It took me 49 years to finally, I think, come to terms that I want to give my life to Christ. I remember a conversation, I think it was actually in service, where Ashley spoke about getting baptized. Announce it to the world. Don't be ashamed of it. Be proud of what you're doing, and don't try to keep it a secret. So instead of having a baptism in the backyard in our pool, we decided to have it with like everybody else. As Easter was approaching, we did it on Good Friday, did it in front of everybody. I am so proud I did it, and continue to be proud of that day.
We were actually walking to the parking lot, and we had passed the baptisms, and something just pulled me back to the baptisms. I was like, I stopped my family and I said, I'm going to get baptized today. And they turned around and said, okay. As soon as I came up from the water, I just felt like a weight lifted off my shoulder. I felt like a new person, totally just changed.